Well, it has been an interesting last few days, hasn't it? As the entire world quite literally woke up to a reminder that yes, that whole military superpower thing actually means something. It describes an observable phenomenon in that the United States Armed Forces are able to do things that literally no other nation's military can. They can pull off shit that everybody else cannot even conceptualize of. A fact that, although having been demonstrated on several occasions, apparently the world needs a quick reminder of every now and then. However, as boisterously as I am in full support of the Trump-Philophagus' actions against Maduro and Venezuela, I do want to talk a little bit about the magical piece of paper, the system of international rules-based world order, because it actually does have a lot to recommend it. And even though I myself as well, of course, was mocking the idea that a magical piece of paper can somehow protect you from the world's largest military, and indeed it is roughly analogous to smearing your face with dirt and cow cum and expecting it to stop bullets, I will nevertheless agree with the Deveroodle here that it is a preferable system. However, it is only a preferable system if it can actually be enforced. See, the rules-based international order has in essence been the West enforcing its will upon the world for the last several hundred years. It has allowed us to draw imaginary lines on a map and create from those inviolable borders that the world respects. It has allowed us to just make up rules as and when we please and enforce them upon everybody else. We create the exceptions. We go into Asia and say, Taiwan is a country, China. You don't get to have that. And all they can do is seethe and whine about it. That is the power of international law, in theory. For you see, international law's magical power comes from the exact same place that monarchy's divine right comes from. For many hundreds of years, kings were ordained, selected by God to rule over people and territories. But of course, in reality, the reason why they owned all of this land, held all of this power, wasn't because the man above made it so. It was because they owned all of the swords. Simple as. Because the old saying that the pen is mightier than the sword is only actually true if you also possess a sword with which to enforce what you write. Simple as. And then we arrive at the principled discussion, because I would like to retain the world order. It has worked out quite brilliantly. It introduced the single longest period of peace and stability that human history has ever seen. But it can only happen so long as the force that enforces it is willing to do so, and this is not a picture that represents that reality. As Tough Touch actually quite brilliantly points out here, someone has to write the rules, buddy, and it is whoever holds the sword. And I want to point out as well, there is no actual principled opposition against this. The very people who are now going, oh, but Trump, international law, will turn around within a second and go, oh, it's not real. Go on, arrest Trump, arrest his wife, somebody do something. We must impeach this dictator. And I remind you, you already did do that. You already declared Trump to be a criminal. You already persecuted him to the fullest extent and far beyond the US legal system. You already arrested him. This isn't you going, oh, but laws are really sacred. No, this is you making the argument from force yet again. See, here's the thing. There is no actual argument against what Trump did from the left, because they've even spent the last 4 years demanding that America do this very thing to Putin. Even here. Oh, but you could go in and arrest Putin now. Go and arrest Putin now. And hey, you know what? I agree. But you gotta bear in mind, Russia is a bit of a different adversary compared to Venezuela, of course. But in theory, hey, why not? But again, the point is, there's no principle behind this. There's no firm morals or stance. It is simply just might makes right. And I know this because for the last 10 years plus, me and many others like me have argued, okay, but no, you can't do that. You must have some principles. You must have some morals. You gotta see the consequences of doing this. You wouldn't like it if it happened to you, would you? And for 10 plus years, the only response from the left has been, I don't care. It's your principles, not mine. Even as the moment it occurs to them, they shriek back in fear and go, oh, but doesn't your principles protect me from that? No, it doesn't. Our principles cannot be our enemies' shields anymore. It simply doesn't work, and we all know it. There's no question here, there's no doubt, this is not open for debate. In fact, the debate has been had over the course of the last 10 years. And this is what it boils down to. We have now finally, after the progressives pushing and pushing and pushing, after the EU's pushing and pushing and pushing, boiled it down to, okay, cool, but can you do anything about it? No, they can't. And this too is exactly how we return. So immediately again, the EU is like, oh, look, we will do this, we'll totally do this, it's fine. We'll just do the same thing that America is doing. Again, there's no principle here. And enforcement. What happens? What actually happens is this. Venezuela military demands the United States release Maduro. Okay. Or what? Do you have some sort of action you could take? You're gonna attack the naval warships? You're gonna invade America? Are you going to complain to some sort of higher body, maybe? No, you aren't. And even if they did exist, you yourself have long since destroyed them. You haven't got an argument. You have an illegitimate president. And even if you had a legitimate one, what is the EU going to do? What is anybody going to do? Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Spain, Mexico, and Uruguay all unite together to sign a piece of paper. Okay. And again, once upon a time, that might have been enough. There might have been consequences from the signing of a piece of paper, but that power has been eroded over the years because the people signing the paper has never been able to enforce it. The only cases where any organization like these are actually effective is when they have enforcement measures. That is what enforced our previous era of peace and prosperity. The absolute knowledge that if somebody stepped out of line, the West would come down hard upon them. And even then, during things like the invasion of Iraq, the first one, absolutely America bore the brunt of the burden, but NATO was also there in places like Serbia and Herzegovina, for example. There was a genuine sense that if you fucked with the Western world order, there was an enforcement mechanism in existence capable of cracking down upon you. That has not existed for a very long time. And we have now returned to the idiotic argument of, do you mean Russia could do this as well? Yes. And Russia tried to do this as well. They tried, and again, Russia's plan was good. It was bold, aggressive, and with a war-winning potential, but they lacked the ability to actually pull it off, whereas the United States did. Furthermore, China too wants to do this. Oh, so when the Chinese launch a special op to seize the president of Taiwan, Russia tries to do the same for Zelensky, what exactly do we say? You can't do that? It's illegal? No. You blow them up. That's what you do. That is how we return to an international world order, when it's not a question of, oh, but we're going to petition the EU. No, you try and do it and you explode. After which, sanctions and repercussions will be applied until the fear of that international world order is real again. It is the only way it can be created. And any other alternative, like this, is just pure fiction. Article 2 of the Charter of the United Nations from Mexico. They're appealing to a military that created this to save them from the ones who broke down the gates of Venezuela. Of course, it's not going to happen. And as for this, Denmark needs to get rid of the US military base in Greenland, and so does the rest of the EU. They aren't going to defend against a Russian invasion, but open a secondary front line to invade you too. It is time to kick the US out worldwide. I mean, you're welcome to do so. The US stands for something like 90 or 70% of NATO's combined military spending, and something like 60% of its actual military force. But sure, you can kick it out. You can simply abandon it, and also, make an enemy out of what is now going to be the world's largest oil producer as well. As at the end of the day, I want this to return. I want the rules-based international order, but it can, once more, only exist so long as the sword backs it up. And I do love these ideas as well, because, Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan will definitely be like, oh, yes, of course, we're gonna break with the United States of America and trust Canada to protect us from China. Yes, absolutely. France, Italy, Spain, and Germany will protect you from China with their vast navy of patrol boats and the occasional frigate. Oh, to be fair, see, here's the thing. The European Union absolutely can have a significant military presence. It could even dwarf that of America, both in terms of air, navy, and land forces, if it actually did something. And that is also the problem. The only reason why we are even in this position is because the EU became actively hostile towards the United States of America. It is ridiculous to blame the US for that, and I'm saying that as a Norwegian. The European Union grew hostile first. It mocked Trump. It hated him. It fed off America, ignored all rules about military spending, and poured it all into social and healthcare systems, ignoring their obligations to build armies to support the US. This was supposed to be a partnership, and it was not, and it hasn't been one for a very long time. Only now, when we are becoming antagonistic towards the US, is the EU beginning to build up its own armed forces. It is ridiculous. It is absurd. And you cannot have a situation where the weaker party that cannot demonstrably enforce its will also be the one acting like they're always in the driver's seat, always in charge. Just from a natural order standpoint, it isn't going to work. And a system that can't function is not a system worth protecting, is not a system worth saving. It needs a massive reset, and the only way, yet again, to do that is this. Now, of course, there are still ample ways for Trump to fuck this up. Oh god, yes, there are ample ways to make an absolute mess out of all of this, but for the time being, that has not happened. And for the time being, this has simply been a clean extraction of a legitimate target, which will now face justice the way it's supposed to be, from those holding the swords. I would like, yet again, to return to this, but it's going to have to be with this and with its approval. Simply how it's going to be. Until next time, thank you all very much for listening, and I do hope to see you all again soon. Till then, have a good day.